Hi, this is Zippi, registered nurse and certified food addiction counselor, and welcome to my weekly Zippi Live every week at 4:30 Israel time on Facebook and later on my YouTube channel. And if you'd like, you can sign up here to get my weekly live directly into your email. And I want to start with a story that I heard yesterday. You see, I run a weekly support group for people who have been through my program, Hebrew-speaking women, who are looking for some more long-term support after they've done the initial detox and really changed their inner dialogue with food. They're looking for some support, and we have a weekly support group for those women who would like to have that for them. And one woman told a story, which is a story that I hear quite often, and that is why I decided to bring it here to my live. She talked about the fact that she doesn't live alone. She lives with her husband and she has children, and they haven't changed anything. The only person who has changed the way they're eating is she. She stopped eating all sugar, flour, junk foods, and stuff like that. When they have guests, they buy stuff or as hospitality, they buy snacks and cakes and ice cream, and they buy quite a bit. This is something that they've always done. And she said they continue to do this. And they had some friends over. And then there was lots of food left in the house. And what she said was that after like 3 or 4 days, the amount of, she said, my husband hasn't changed the way he's eating. My kids really haven't changed the way they're eating. And the only one who's changed the way they're eating is me. And all of a sudden, I realized that after 3 or 4 days, the amount of ice cream and cakes that is left over isn't very different than it was after our guests left. But before I began this program, by the time 3 or 4 days from the time our friends had come over had passed, all this stuff would be gone, which means that I was the one who ate it because there was hardly a dent in the ice cream now after 4 days. And it used to be that after 4 or 5 days, a week hadn't gone by and it was all gone. And it sort of made her realize how much she used to eat without even being conscious of it. And that is what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about unconscious eating, which is something, especially in today's food environment, is rampant. In today's food environment, it is responsible for so much weight gain and metabolic disease like diabetes, or worsening of metabolic syndrome or metabolic diseases that are already happening. And I'm going to explain to you how it happens. You see, these foods are very attractive. We are biologically attracted to them because our biological wiring is to want rich food because it is scarce. If it's there, you better eat it because you don't know when it's going to be there again. Now, that was true until very recently. If we look at human history, for 10,000 years, that was true until about 70 years ago. But now it's everywhere and all over the place, and we are super attracted to it. And we all know that we shouldn't be eating a lot of it. So what we do is we have just a little taste. And because we had just a little taste on our way to the kitchen, on our way to the fridge, or when we opened the fridge door, or, when I gave the kids some ice cream, I just took a little lick of it. I didn't have a whole bowl, but I just took some. But I had, you served it to 3 kids, or you served it 3 times over the course of the day, or whatever it is. What happens is all these little bites and nashes and snacks, and this little, another spoonful here and another few grapes there and just a little. And because we're not actually sitting down and eating it, because we don't want to do that because it's fattening and it's not good for you, what happens with that, we forget about it. We don't think about it. We have that little piece and then it's gone. It never happened. And it never happened many, many times over the course of the day. There's another kind of unconscious eating, like when we're cooking, licking the spoon, tasting a bite of the thing to make sure it tastes good, having just a little piece, just having a slice of the bread that was baked, whatever it is. over the course of the day, especially people who are more attracted to these foods, will do this kind of unconscious eating. And then what happens is the calories rack up. Now, in GPS to sugar free, right? When we talk about, getting to food freedom, we don't like to talk about calories because it's really not all about the calories. But you can't ignore the amount of food that you eat, be it unhealthy foods or healthy foods. Now, especially if this unconscious eating is of these unhealthy foods, that calorie versus calorie cause weight gain and cause us to make more fat. And they also really burden the systems in our body that metabolize food. That's when we start getting in trouble. We start gaining weight without and saying, like, I don't know where it came from. I don't overeat, because we're being careful in our meals, but we're not being careful in between the meals. And that's where that trap lies. So it's very, very important to understand that this snacking, this like constant snacking, even if it's just small amounts, first of all, it racks up. Especially it racks up very easily if it's those sweet, sugary, starchy, hyper processed foods that cause, you'd only need a little bit to cause quite significant weight gain and metabolic stress. And so let's talk about it. So it can be just a lot of calories racking up, even if it is healthy food. If you're like snacking on nuts that are very calorie dense, then you could end up gaining weight. But if you're snacking on like, a little piece of cookie here and a little piece of chocolate there and just one spoonful of the ice cream, and then you're tasting from the cooking and then you're tasting from the pasta that you made of your kids, well, that can really rack up. And then what happens? A few things. First of all, let's start with your mouth, where the food goes in. When we are constantly eating or eating little amounts, even little amounts, but very often over the course of the day, our saliva glands don't get a chance to replenish the saliva properly in between meals. Because that's basically how our biology is wired, is to eat a meal and rest in between. And when we don't have that rest from eating in between meals of like 3 or 4 hours from in between meals, a number of things happen. So first of all, our saliva doesn't replenish the liquids properly. So already the first station of the digestive system is already not getting what it needed. Then when you are constantly eating these foods that raise insulin, and even if you're eating a little bit, but it's constantly keeping our insulin levels, right? Because we're eating usually these sugary, starchy stuff. So we need insulin to get the sugar out of our blood. And then basically we're burdening the insulin system because our insulin works best when it works when we eat and then it rests in between our meals. And when we don't give our system, our insulin, that time to rest, insulin resistance comes, which means that our receptors in our bodies don't read the insulin properly. And then we need even more insulin to do the job that it needs to do, to like take that sugar from our blood and put it in the places in the body where it needs. And when we have too much insulin in our system is making more fat, which means we're gaining more weight, and we're also promoting a situation of inflammation, of chronic inflammation in the body, because that's what happens when we have too much insulin for too long. So it's this inflammatory state that's causing weight gain. That's why sometimes people who have diabetes will start needing medication, or maybe the medication that they're taking won't work and they're going to need more medication, or they're going to go from the more medication already to insulin injections. And a lot of it is this unconscious eating that people don't even think about and they're not even aware of. And then we have another system that gets harmed from this unconscious eating, and that's the dopamine stimulation in our brain. Every time we eat, our brain gets stimulated at the pleasure centers in our brain, which is the place where addiction develops. So every time we eat, that little piece of cookie, that little ice cream, whatever it is, we're priming our brain with that hit of that like hyper stimulating food. And what happens is that our brain gets used to that hyper stimulation so that you keep wanting more. So you have the insulin, which also, by the way, when there's too much insulin and there's insulin resistance, we're constantly hungry. And then you have like your brain constantly getting hit from this dopamine that makes you just want more, because the more you eat, the more you want. And it gets into this vicious cycle of like walking around all day feeling like I need to eat something. And then when you're walking around all day feeling like you need to eat something, well, we don't want to eat all day. We know that's bad for us. So we end up snacking just a little, just taking a little bite to like ease the pressure of that feeling. And so it's this vicious cycle of snacking, which causes us to feel hungry and tired and irritable, which makes us want these snacks more. And that is how it goes. And then there's these people who come to me with diabetes or metabolic syndrome or obesity or all of them, right? And say, I don't really eat that much over the day. But suddenly, when they go into this scheduled eating of eating breakfast and fasting in between. I mean, it's fasting from food, like just drinking and not eating, living life in between meals. And then 3 or 4 hours later, having a meal and then living your life without food in between the meals. And then sitting down at the table and having a meal and then living your life. And then fasting at night until you eat the next day in the morning. And when we do that, that is how we adults are biologically wired. We are not babies who need to eat every 2 hours. We're biologically wired to eat and then have a rest, and eat and then give our systems time to rest and replenish. And when we do that, then first of all, we remember what we ate. And second of all, we also give those systems a time, the chance to recuperate and to work properly according to the biological way that they were meant to eat, that we were meant to eat. So the best way to get rid of this unconscious eating is to really get into the habit of eating 3 meals a day and nothing in between. I don't call it nothing in between. I call it living life in between. Living life without food related issues, because there is a life that is not related to food. And when we don't have we're not constantly dealing with the food, we're much freer when we're much, we can just pay full attention to living our life in between the meals. So give full attention to your meals and then give full attention to your life in between the meals. And that is my message for you. That is the way to get over unconscious eating. And I'm going to give a warning. At the beginning, it's uncomfortable. It doesn't feel right because it's very easy to get into this loop of constant snacking. And I can tell you that when I started doing it at the beginning, I was shocked at how many times I found like something in my mouth before I had even realized it, like while I was cooking or while I was preparing my meal or whatever it happened. So this is something that is maybe, especially at the beginning, can be uncomfortable and not easy and requires some effort at the beginning. But once you get used to it, the recommendation is if you do anything for 41 days, 45 days, I think it is, without stopping in between, without a break in between, it becomes a habit. And if you'll see that if you do this regularly, it just you can lose weight without even like thinking about, without doing too much changes. All of a sudden, you're much freer and you have much more attention in the middle of the day. So this is my recommendation for you. So if you liked this video, first of all, if you do try this, let us know how it works for you. And if you liked this video, well, like it and pass it on, share it. And if you're watching in my YouTube channel, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you hit that notification button, then every time that it's Zippi Live or any new video comes out, you will get notified. And if you would like to actually have the weekly Zippi Live straight into your inbox in your email, then I will leave a link where you can sign up to get it right into your email every single week so you don't miss a Zippi Live. Have a great day, a wonderful evening, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.